by the state. In fact, they print the ballots, so we have no cost for ballot printing for those elections, because they supply those. Where on the town election, we pay for the ballots. Election worker costs would be the same. Programming costs would be the same, or not the same, but shared among all of the elections. For the primary, as much as it can be the lowest attended election of all, usually has the highest cost for programming, because there are at least this coming year, there are 3 ballots to program, so that's additional costs. And for the state election, there will undoubtedly be ballot questions in November, so that's an added cost. So programming costs for the machines would be higher than for the local election, which generally has a smaller ballot.
So let's just average it off and say approximately $16,000 per election. And based on that, there's $32,000 of additional expense over what was budgeted this past year for what we would call a level-funded budget.
Is that accurate? I thought, Barbara, you said the difference is 23,000?
23 is what I had. Last year's, or this current year's budget, I had at $180,000 for one election, and going into a level services budget for FY11, I come to 202,400. 202,400. So I'm
You're
estimating
a
$23,000.
$23,000 difference,
And-
including the 3 elections.
Including 3 elections. And likewise, in FY09, when we had 3 elections, the budget was up approximately 2,300. I really have about a $100 difference.
So it's not
Additional this
32,
year.
it's closer to
23.
$24,000. Okay.
Yeah.
Barbara, as far as implementing the level services budget,
Yeah,
I mean, obviously, the bulk of it is personnel, hours.
correct.
So what are you talking about, a half-time person, half a person?
In order to meet level funding, the position would have to be cut by 19 hours to equal a 16-hour-a-week person. And I've still, as I said, diminished many line items by small amounts just to keep that amount of a person in the office. So a lot of adjustments were made to other line items, in addition to that cut alone.
Yeah,
And
but
again,
for the
they're
most
not-
part,
What are the
the other line items are small, tiny adjustments.
One of the adjustments under, just talking about elections a little bit, you're talking about adjusting police and DPW. Does that mean you're gonna be
Well,
throwing open the back of your van and throwing all the stuff in the back of yours?
I
stuff
wish I
yourself?
had a van big
Yeah, I know,
enough.
yeah.
The
I mean,
adjustments are,
How can you make an adjustment like that when I would think that those costs are fairly well fixed?
the adjustment in the public works is in the hope that I would not need to incur overtime costs for the setup or take down of the polls for one of the 3 elections. As far as the police, one of the areas that I fund for a major election like the upcoming November election for governor is to have details in the street. It's what I had here at Town Hall or the high school, based on the expectation that there would be high traffic. So those were cuts that were made there. It became a
So
necessity
that-
because I couldn't cut ballot printing costs.
No, I know,
couldn't
that's
cut-
what I mean, I mean,
Yeah,
most of your operation is pretty well fixed
it
as far as what
really
you have to
is.
do. And that's what I was questioning, it's almost a $2,000 cut.
Yeah, it is.
And it's
It
more
is
on a
something.
wish, a whim, and a maybe,
It is, exactly.
rather than an actual ability to implement.
Yeah, it is somewhat, I agree with you.
So
The
if that's the
other
case, I
option-
think it's important for us to know that. You're obviously, you're incurring additional expenses because you have an additional election. And that $2,000 may never come to fruition, depending upon weather, timing, what else is going on out here as far as the availability of DPW and the ability to set it up during normal working hours
Right.
as opposed to
Right,
on overtime, so. That's why I just wanna put it in
yeah.
the right context so that,
I mean, if I restore that, then I cut more hours in a person to reach level funding. And I can't make that sacrifice on that end because we have to run the show.
right.
Jeff?
Yes, in looking at the actual expenditures for 2009, I see 40,298. Did you say that we had 3 elections in '09?
Yes,
Is that right?
yes.
Okay.
Where are you looking?
I'm on page, it's not numbered, the elections page, FY 211. It's before the detail page.
Okay,
Is there a line item associated with it?
Yes, 5,100, I'm sorry, or 50,
50 for personnel.
51 through 58. Okay, I'm looking at the total for that,
Yeah,
for that line.
right.
Okay, it's 43,298. We had 3 elections, 3 locations. And then you level funded 2011 less than that. And then you projected level services to be 46,392. Now, that's with 1 location and 3 elections. And I'm trying to figure out that, how does, would it have been more if we had had 3 locations as we believe it might have been?
Well, some of the costs are in personnel costs, which have increased, whether it's office staffing
Right.
or overtime, or election worker salaries that may have had an increase. I don't recall when, but since 2009, there might have been a 50 cent an hour increase in the election worker salaries. I don't have my breakdown from FY '09 with me.
Because if we are supposedly using less personnel, is that personnel
Well,
your
the
services, or is
personnel-
that including the police, or is that just?
No,
yeah.
that would be the, just the election workers and office staff.
So
The-
that doesn't change, right?
No,
I don't
that
believe
doesn't
that changed,
change.
right, that's right,
Correct.
okay. Are the,
That covers also town meeting, the various town meetings that have election staff in attendance, as well as my office staff. So there's,
for my edification, it's the two town meetings and the 3 elections,
correct,
so.
and the town meetings may have more than one session. So-
I recall, we had a special town meeting
Correct.
as well, but we don't have the 2010 numbers in as of
No,
yet to make a
no.
comparison. Okay, all right, I was just trying to put that together for
Yeah.
myself.
All right.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just, and then, as far as your level services, how can you cut advertising?
Well, the advertising portion is not for the election notices. What it is the legal notices I put in the back of the paper for the code book, the bylaws that are amended at town meeting, and instead of listing them fully listing the articles and things, references being made to that the articles can be found at the town clerk's office. You know, they've been approved by the Attorney General, and now they can be viewed at the town clerk's office. So at least I have an abbreviated notice rather than a complete notice, and that suffices.
That impacts Bob.
It does impact Bob,
Not good.
you know.
No.
I would just like to mention too, that when we talk about the services that are provided, things that happen unforeseen, as we've really recently seen, are these 2 special elections that were called, you know, due to special circumstances that require the office staff, you know, to function under those. There's been new legislation in vital records that affects our office in 2010. And as you all know, things like the new legislation for the ethics reform bill impacts my office tremendously now, where we are responsible for maintaining all of these conflict of interest receipts and the online training receipts and following up on that. So we have a lot of new mandated duties that continue to grow each year, so it just requires personnel to run that.
Any other questions for Barbara? So, you know, I think, the two things that were mentioned, we need to, as we do a complete recap, is to take a hard look at the issue that, in fact, this is not, you know, a level funded budget is the way I view it compared to last year would be for the services that were provided last year, and we're adding services here,
Right,
so
we're
I
adding
think
two
we have to take a
elections
look
to
at that.
And again, next year, it will go down. So there's a fluctuation each year in this budget. It goes down to 1 next year, up to 2 the following year, up to 3 the year next year. There's always 1, 2, or 3 elections. It's in constant flux, just depending on that.
Okay. All set?
Thank you. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
Now we have, I saw Helena here, but Heidi is asked to go before you. Is that okay with you?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Call me
We're also agreeable tonight,
So far,
so far.
we out in the fire one.
Let's see, community planning.
30.
30?
30.
At the bottom, I think.
Yep,
Or
30.
two.
30, Mr. O'Leary.
Formal tonight, huh?
Steve's older than 30. Okay, Heidi, you have the floor.
Well, overall, what we did is we went ahead and provided you with a level services budget, which actually does not really have a negative impact overall in our department because we had the same budget last year. The only, out of the whole budget, the only thing I would point out is that we have funding for the part-time GIS position in the budget this year, but because of the budget freeze, we haven't been able to fill it. It's still in here for next year as well, it was not cut. The reduction on services, not having that position, primarily actually to other town employees, as well as members of the public coming in and requesting the maps, it's been problematic for public service. So if I were to, note one thing in all of our budget, I mean, because conversely, we've gone ahead, we've increased fees in light of, the economic deficit. What we did is we reviewed all our fees, our site plan fees, subdivision regulation fees, commercial activity, especially cell towers. Our cell tower fees were slightly low. So we did a comparative study of, the equitable communities in terms of the Mass Municipal Association. And we did raise all our fees, so I'd like to think we've kind of gone ahead and been proactive in terms of making sure our income for the town has worked to offset as much as possible what we could do. We still, believe it or not, I was kind of surprised myself, but we did still see last year 32 new subdivision lots, which is surprising if you were to think overall, given the economy. The biggest subdivision you'll see is out on Marblehead Street. It's the 28 lot subdivision. They're actually, I went out there today. They have the first phase of the road done, and they're gonna continue phasing it as they move along. The biggest indicator of permitting activity has been cell towers. I think we're gonna keep seeing those based on the number of meetings that carriers have had lately. 166 Chestnut, Castle Road, 87 Concord Street. What's happening is most carriers are coming in and co-locating, which is, overall good for the town, because those fees are actually our highest when we do the study. Having said that, the regular work still continues on, and it's been steadily busy. And I would just, point out that part-time vacant position not being filled, it would be respectfully considered if you could take a look at the possibility of filling that one person.
Heidi, we've come off of, not this past year, a fairly high period of growth in the town with a lot of activity. Comparing it to where it is this year, I mean, we're